one of the last operations I did there was in an 11-year-old girl whose car was hit by an Apache helicopter, probably by I think it's Hellfire missiles that those things shoot.
Mm-hmm.
But
Mm-hmm.
her dad's legs were completely ripped off. He died. Both of her brothers were killed. And so we had to repair both of her legs and her left arm. Now, if she was in, again, any functional, like truly functional hospital, we would take her back to the OR regularly, probably every 2 or 3 days. We would pick away at any dead tissue that's happened. We would try to figure out how to close wounds. We would try to figure out how to align bones. But this girl doesn't eat. She's in a filthy, overcrowded hospital where there's no anesthetics available, or no anesthesia time available. There are actually anesthetics, but there's such a constant flow of emergency cases coming in that you can't do anything else. So she's gonna eventually her limbs are eventually gonna cause sepsis, and they're gonna have to be amputated.
There is currently, I didn't know, I was wondering if you had worked at the Nasser Hospital.
Yeah, that's where I was this time, yeah.
Yeah, there is actually some reporting about this. Haaretz just wrote an article saying that since the war with Iran has started, and I think we can call it a war at this point, they have redoubled their shootings of people going to food aid sites. And they are not actually evacuating Nasser Hospital, but they're evacuating the area around it, which according to people there makes it impossible really for them to function. So there's a little bit of what Haaretz said. Over the weekend, the IDF intensified its strikes around Nasser Hospital in Khan Yunis. Last week, the military issued evacuation orders for all areas surrounding the facility, the second largest hospital in Gaza, and the attacks have since moved closer to the compound. On Saturday and Sunday, both the UN and the International Committee of the Red Cross warned that the hospital's closure would severely undermine the ability to provide medical care to nearly 1 million residents of southern Gaza. So this is the area they're evacuating around the hospital. This is from June 12th. And this is a doctor working there explaining what the implications are of this.
Amazing field hospitals, UK Med, ICRC, MSF Belgium have some amazing facilities, as do the Jordanian and the Kuwait hospital, but none of them are capable of doing the type of surgery that we're doing here, and none of them have ICU capacity or generated oxygen. So even all of those together couldn't cope with the amount of patients that we have here at Nasser. So we've really got nowhere to go. So if Nasser is evacuated, we really are looking at the imminent death of hundreds of patients because we won't be able to take them anywhere.
Can you speak to that a little bit, having been there? Because it seems to me that this is very typical of the Israelis. They're not shutting down the hospital, but they're making it impossible for the hospital to function. Very much like with Tehran, Netanyahu's giving himself plausible deniability by saying, we want the civilians to evacuate. So then when they start killing the civilians, they can say, as they did many times with Gaza, well, we told them to evacuate. This wasn't our intention. She also seems to be describing a level of capacity to treat people that, from the article you wrote in the Times and from other reporting, seems unusual. From what she's describing, it seems like this particular hospital is unusually functional relative to others.
Yeah, so Nasser is unique in a few ways. One is that it's on the western side of Khan Yunis, so it's basically the most insulated hospital from the Israeli assault in the entire strip. And two, it has a living quarters that's available for internationals, so a lot of internationals go there, and that's where I was on my second trip. But yeah, so Victoria and I worked together during my first trip to Gaza. She's been going to Gaza for like 30 years, if I remember the numbers right. With Nasser, So Nasser is essentially the last functional hospital in the Gaza Strip. Indonesian hospital basically doesn't exist. Shifa Hospital, which she said, or I think the Haaretz article said that Nasser is the second biggest hospital in Gaza. That's actually not true. It's functionally the largest hospital in Gaza because Shifa, which was 3 times its size, doesn't exist for all meaningful intensive purposes.
Right.
Shifa Hospital right now is just an outpatient urgent care clinic and apparently an operating room that's been set up in a dentist's office. So it's literally nothing.
And that was one of the first ones that got hit, right?
Oh, Shifa has been attacked multiple times.
Yeah.
Multiple times. It's been completely and utterly destroyed now. And then Kamal Adwan Hospital was under siege for literally 3 months, has been ripped to shreds, is completely useless. The Ahli Baptist Hospital was hit with 2 missiles in May that destroyed the emergency room. It's completely useless. I think also destroyed the oxygen generator there. So it's completely useless. And then European Hospital until yesterday morning was occupied by Israeli troops, which is the other. Those are really the only 5 serious hospitals in Gaza. So Nasser is really the only one that's left. It's commonly said that there's 36 hospitals in Gaza. It's completely incorrect. They're like calling a rehab center a hospital is not a serious thing. It's just, but that's how the WHO does it, so fine. There are really 5 hospitals in Gaza, and Nasser is really the last one left that's functioning in any meaningful capacity. But even when I was there, which again was 2 months ago now, even when I was there, pardon me, the ability of the hospital to provide medical care was extremely limited. Like my job as a trauma surgeon is mostly to stop people from bleeding to death. And so that doesn't require fancy technology, because you can imagine you don't have time to use it if someone's bleeding badly. So I was able to do my job, but the reconstructive work that it takes to put people together, because again, remember, these people are mostly not being shot. Most of them are being blown up. It's a massive level of injury. You have to have adequate burn care. You have to have adequate orthopedic care. You have to have adequate ophthalmic care for eyes. You have to have feeding tubes. You have to have feeding formulas. You have to there's all sorts of stuff, none of which is particularly unusual in the third world. Like I was in Burkina Faso last year, which is such a poor place that most people don't know where it is. They had these things in their main hospital, but and like I said, Nasser is the largest hospital in Gaza right now. Nasser doesn't have any of this stuff. It has an ICU, like Rose was saying. She goes by Rose. Like Rose was saying, it has an ICU, but the ICU is extremely limited in what it can do. The point she was trying to make is that these field hospitals don't even have an ICU. They don't even have pretending to be an ICU. The field hospitals are basically an emergency room, an operating room, and nothing else. They sometimes they have a few beds, but they're like a dozen, like 12, 24 beds, something like that. So yeah, Nasser is the only place where meaningful healthcare can even be done. But even then, the meaningfulness of that healthcare is very, very limited. It even was 2 months ago. Now it's much more so. And you got to remember, half of the people that are injured in these airstrikes are small children. And when they're reconstructing a kid's limbs is not an easy thing to do. It requires a lot of expertise. But more importantly, it requires a lot of equipment, which again is available in the third world. It's not so expensive that it only exists in New York, but it's just not available because of the blockade. So these kids are just having they're just like, one of the last operations I did there was in an 11-year-old girl whose car was hit by an Apache helicopter, probably by I think it's Hellfire missiles that those things shoot. But her dad's legs were completely ripped off. He died. Both of her brothers were killed. And so we had to repair both of her legs and her left arm. Now, if she was in, again, any functional, truly functional hospital, we would take her back to the OR regularly, probably every 2 or 3 days. We would pick away at any dead tissue that's happened. We would try to figure out how to close wounds. We would try to figure out how to align bones. But this girl doesn't eat. She's in a filthy, overcrowded hospital where there's no anesthetics available, or no anesthesia time available. There are actually anesthetics, but there's such a constant flow of emergency cases coming in that you can't do anything else. So she's gonna eventually her limbs are eventually gonna cause sepsis, and they're gonna have to be amputated. So she's gonna lose 3 out of her 4 limbs, almost certainly. In fact, I'd be kind of surprised if she wasn't losing them right now. She's an 11-year-old girl. Her dad's dead. I think her mother is alive, or at least her aunt. I met an aunt at the bedside. what kind of life is she going to have?
See,
This is just an outrageous situation, and this is what it means to destroy a healthcare system. It means an 11-year-old girl has her limbs amputated instead of living a normal life.
And I remember, when Shifa was hit, the Washington Post did that big investigation because that was the hospital that Israel had to claim. There were tunnels underneath, and so Washington Post did this big investigation, and they found, of course, not surprisingly, no evidence to substantiate the claims that the IDF was making about how there was a Hamas headquarters underneath it, blah, blah, blah. But you notice they've destroyed almost all of the other hospitals without having to make any such proclamations. Like, like the extent to which it's just been normalized that you would just attack hospitals is pretty astounding.
Yeah, and how did they get away with that? Like that Washington Post article is actually a good example. Even when the press, I know some of the reporters that wrote that article, and they're very good. They're very smart. They know exactly what they're doing, and they know exactly how their editor is going to make them word things. So if you read that Post article, the first the paragraph where it basically tells you the overall finding is that the way any normal person would read it, would write that paragraph, if you read the evidence that they present lower down, is that everything the Israelis said was bullshit. It was complete nonsense from start to finish, and none of it's true. Yep. What they wrote, and I don't have the exact words in front of me, obviously, but what they wrote is something along the lines of, Israel failed to provide evidence for some of its claims related to Shifa Hospital. Well, that sounds very mealy-mouthed. That sounds like you're just picking on the Israelis. They said there were 2 tunnels, but there were 3. So you're saying you're being so unfair. That doesn't sound at all like the Israelis just made up a bunch of bullshit, and the media ran with it because they're stupid. Or I shouldn't say stupid. They're not stupid. They're gullible and willfully misled. Well, yeah, I mean, so even if you read unless you go through the article and then you reconsider what you read at the beginning and say, wait a minute, I don't think this article showed that Israel failed to provide evidence for some of its claims. This evidence shows that everything the Israelis said is bullshit.
Right.
Unless you're willing to sit there and do a research project, which is not how most people read the news, understandably so.
Right.
You're not going to get it, even from the most critical piece that you can imagine. Yeah, and the Washington Post is hardly the only one. The Associated Press had a long investigation into attacks on, I think, Kamal Adwan, Shifa, and maybe Nasser, because Nasser was invaded and occupied last year when I was at European Hospital. It's just totally outrageous. Actually, I'll just tell you a story. I wrote an article for the New York Times with maybe I won't tell you the full story. Anyway, I will tell you that we have written things about how outrageous the Israeli claims are related to attacks on hospitals, and nobody has any interest in publishing them. Nobody. Even when I'm writing with a world-leading expert on international law.
Nobody.
I mean, like if you had a journal, I'm sure you would publish it. But
sure, yeah.
But no, corporate media just has no interest in publishing it. And that's after going through several rounds of edits with the Times. It's crazy.
Wow.
The Israelis are making up a bunch of bullshit to justify attacking hospitals. Okay. And furthermore, the U.S. knows full well that it's all not like the U.S. government, like the Executive Department, the National Security Council. These people aren't morons. They know the Israelis are lying through their teeth. What's that guy's name? Even the State Department spokesperson, Matt Miller. He just gave an interview, I think, to Sky News, where he said that he knew full well the Israelis were committing war crimes.
Yeah.
But it's not my job at the podium, the vaulted podium. It's not my job to say at the podium my own personal beliefs. It's my job to convey the findings of the United States government.
Yeah,
it's complete nonsense. It's a Hitlerian argument. I was just following orders, but it doesn't matter. But the point is, if even the State Department propagandist knows that the Israelis are committing war crimes, obviously the rest of the State Department knows as well. He's the guy they would hide it from, so he looks genuine in front of the audience, right? So they all know it. Because they're not stupid. They can read English, and they follow the news. I mean, these people are news addicts, if anything, if nothing else. So it's just outrageous behavior.
Hey, you've all heard about Amra colostrum by now. It's actually good for you. I looked it up. It's been the best kept secret of industry insiders for a while, but word is finally getting out, and for good reason. Amra colostrum is everywhere these days. When I first heard about it, I thought it was almost too good to be true. That's true. Thousands and thousands of people reporting absolutely transformational health benefits, tens of thousands of 5-star reviews, and life-changing stories. Colostrum is the first nutrition we receive in life, and it's an exclusive source of all the essential nutrients we need in order to thrive. Armra Colostrum is a bioactive whole food with 400-plus functional nutrients like antibodies, antioxidants, micronutrients, and minerals. It's been known to strengthen immunity, to improve gut health, to ignite metabolism, among other benefits. Armra Colostrum is cruelty-free and only uses surplus colostrum from grass-fed cows that would otherwise be waste produce. It's a win-win. We've worked out a special offer for my audience. Receive 15% off your first order. Go to tryarmra.com/Jimmy or enter Jimmy to get 15% off your first order. That's tryarmra.com/Jimmy. Come see us on tour in Glasgow, Manchester, Belfast, Dublin, Liverpool, Birmingham, and London. Go to jimmydore.com for a link for tickets.